you had something that I've never had. I was like, what? He says, you had a very trying moment that lets you see the internal raw nature of humanity and how you respond to it.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Podcast. I'm Aaron Bear with my co-host,
Christine Butler.
and we're here to cover Governor Ricky Rosselló today, an extraordinary human being that I've got to meet and know. Welcome to the Extraordinary Podcast. We call you Ricky. Can we call you Ricky today, or what?
Yeah, what
should we call you?
Today?
Yeah, you definitely call me Ricky. My family does. All of my friends do. Happy to respond to that. Happy to be here with you, Aaron and Christine.
Well, thank you.
Well, I met you on my health span journey, and we've forged a friendship and partnership for the future and writing a book together. But want to give people that don't know you a little bit of your background. Maybe we start back in 2016 or somewhere in there or even before, where you kind of grew up knowing that you were being molded to be a politician, but along the way, you got a PhD in stem cells. Wherever you want to start, I guess. I know so much about you. I want to tell everyone so much about you. But
tell us your story.
Yeah, tell us your story.
Great. Well, I'll as in Spaceballs, I'll give you the short version, and we can dive in however we want to go. But again, thank you for the opportunity. You know, I'm a scientist that along the way bumped my head, lost a couple IQ points, and got into politics. And then after an extraordinary experience, both the good and the bad, I've used that, you know, for several things, to continue on my scientist track, to work on business models, and also I think the higher calling and the purpose to see how we can, you know, add a little grain to the progress of humanity, if
Right.
you will. So, very early on, as I was working on stem cells and regenerative medicine, I also had this passion for my island, for Puerto Rico, where there's for many probably know, but for those that don't, Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. So we're part of the United States. We're U.S. citizens, but we're not quite a state. So when it comes time to make decisions, you know, we are when it's good, we are last in line, and when it's bad, we're first in line. And so part of my battle and the journey has been to figure out how to change that current status from Puerto Rico, and in my view, to become a state. So within that passion project, you know, I saw that there were certain things that could be done politically. I was very young. And originally, I thought I was just going to create a strategic plan for Puerto Rico, give it to somebody else, work along with great folks, download it to some experienced politician. But there was a moment where I saw that was not going to happen, and so I decided to run. And against some significant odds, I was able to prevail in a close primary and then in a close election. And became governor of Puerto Rico, you know, as I've told you many times, to face a lot of the wraths, right? We came in, there was a fiscal crisis where we had $500 million in the bank and $127 billion worth of debt. So we have to work with that. As we were managing to fix the fiscal house, 8 months into our administration, we get hit not by one, but by two major hurricanes, Hurricane Maria being the one that's more noticeable and that people remember. And in that process, you know, my goal was to reform, reshape, and redirect Puerto Rico into a region of prosperity, of course. About 2 years down the line, you know, we were able to announce the first year of economic growth in about 20 years in the island. We had the lowest unemployment rates, lowest crime rates, amongst other things. And then, lo and behold, a few months after that, I saw myself in a position where I had to make a very tough internal choice. of resigning the position that I had worked so hard to execute and that I was proud to be part of. That, of course, comes, and I'm sure we'll discuss about it. There was I had to face social, social uprisings and so forth. I had to face international media and what does that does to your persona and your reputation. The way I've described it is one moment I was flying high. We were building things, doing projecting great, and a few days later, I was at the bottom of the totem pole, being envisioned as quite frankly a villain. And the months afterwards were a soul searching process. I had to make sure that my family was safe, number one, but also internally hash out what that meant. And in that process, I am grateful because. Sometimes you have to when you encounter some of these potentially catastrophic or traumatic events is when you get to see certain things that others may not have that opportunity to see, and that's where you can distill certain insights, lessons, and hopefully pass those down as you've spoken about, Aaron. We're working on some of those things together. We're trying to see how we can put little insights that could help leaders and society move forward. And right now, amongst all of that challenge, uh, able to rebound, be resilient. I was elected by way of write-in for.
So let's explore that a little bit more, because I want to give the listeners a little bit of your background, because I know a lot about this story from your book here, Reformer's Dilemma, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But obviously, you had overcome a lot of different challenges to kind of create an extraordinary results for the island of Puerto Rico and the people of Puerto Rico. Then you really have this specifically thing happen to you where the multiple political parties in the Puerto Rico ecosystem start attacking from different angles, and were able to kind of chisel away at your reputation, not by facts but by literally creating something, and just maybe share a little bit about that specifically so people understand, and then understand, I think, how you and your family kind of had to deal with that and overcome that.
Well, let me share a story of how, as I mentioned, things were going fairly well after the kind of socially traumatic things we had to work on the island, both the fiscal side, the economic side, the natural disaster element, and up until that point, up until July of 2019, Aaron. I had never taken a vacation. I was, that's one of the things. I mean, I think people, I'm eligible for any criticism, but not working hard is definitely not one of them. And so I've my wife included in that. She really worked hard as well during that time period. So for the first time, we decided to take a 5-day vacation. Um, we had our little one, which was born while we were in office, Pedro, and Claudia, who was growing, and so we decided to take a Disney cruise in the Mediterranean, and as we're going over there, and we make the first stop. I get a barrage of messages, and the first the first messages, the first set of messages was that they had arrested my former education secretary, and minutes after they had arrested someone related with the healthcare field. So it was this cloud of corruption that started spreading first. Uh, in tandem, there was a release of certain text and internal messages that I had discussed with my with my internal circle. Some of them, I've they had a very strong language and inappropriate. Um, and those two things kind of blended together, and it became this story that it wasn't just the two pieces, but rather this idea that I was corrupt, morally corrupt, that I was against the people of Puerto Rico and so forth, and there was this uprising, and there were a lot of things that were in play there, but not to shorten the story. As soon as this happened, I have to tell my family, next stop, I got to catch a couple of planes, go back home, figure things out. They stayed behind, soon followed. Um, but and I wanted to face it, but I underestimated the force which what this was coming, right? A lot of things merged. It is not lost on me that even though we were getting good economic indicators and society was going forward, that we had just gone through a big traumatic event, and a lot of people had lost a lot. And sometimes there's a powder cake that's ready to explode, and those two events provoked it. It was very quick. Once I saw that my family was in danger, number one, and number two, that I was not going to be able to execute at the rate that I was accustomed to execute, just because I had lost the trust at that point. I decided to step down, and move to the side and let things progress. So that happened quickly. I had sharp vision then, but of course, the days and months after is when you start questioning. Did I really do these things? Where were the mistakes? What can I learn from this? And that's what ensued after that.
Well, I think, obviously we're in a state of the world where cancel culture is, we want to cancel people quickly. Now I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you have a redemption story, that I think people want to hear. I mean, I can only imagine to be in your situation where a lot of times you're very misunderstood by
Right.
your friends, your family, and maybe your coworkers. But here you have a whole, basically island that has a unfactual, basically narrative on you. But that narrative, 18 months later, some investigative reporters investigated the original intelligence that was reported on you, and which obviously I know from cancel culture is, once one thing's published, then 100 other articles, appear, and now it looks like facts. That's why we should, never trust the media, right? We should always question everything. But come 18 months later, some of the people that were against you actually led an investigative report. Maybe share a little bit about that, because out here there's a lot of people being canceled, but
It's an
we don't.
extraordinary thing to come back from that. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
Well, it's very tough, and look, Aaron and Christine, once we left, that wasn't the end of it, right? They the opposition and some folks, and some folks, quite frankly, that didn't know. I don't assign ill intent, but they kind of wanted to pile on, right? So the government created an independent body that was filled with people from the opposition party, to identify if there were any crimes, right? So that this lingering idea about the corruption, things that were said in the chat, and so forth. Um, and we were open to it. We handed all the information that they wanted and so forth. It took 18 months, an investigation that typically should have taken a couple, maybe a few months or a few weeks. And at the end of the investigation, uh, it was November 2020. Um, they not only showed that there was no crime or intent of crime, they also showed that a lot of what was presented as evidence, a lot of the texts that were written, were actually manipulated, manufactured, and just outright wrong, right? And it goes back, just to give people perspective. There were hundreds of pages of things that came out, and so people couldn't really detect what was real versus what was not real. Um, when I came from the vacation, the first thing I said, look, I own up. I don't have any these text messages anymore. They delete, when you have these Telegram messages. But I know I said some, some things in the privacy of our discussion. So I owned up to them, thinking that perhaps that would be enough to overcome it. And then so hundreds of pages were attached to me, and many of them were realized to be fraudulent. I think that stirred up a lot of people, even though that was in page 26 as opposed to getting global headlines like the other piece of the story was. But then I hadn't returned to the island since. I wanted to stay away from the center of gravity, if you will. And then in May of 2021, there's this election for congressional delegates. It was a new congressional delegation that was being put on the island, and people decided to say that they wanted to start a write-in movement to write my name in. I didn't comment at all. It was I thought it was kind, but the chances of people writing my name were slim, and furthermore, I thought I was already building my life with my family and so forth. As the election approaches, my intent was to stay quiet and just to live it be. But my wife, which is the voice of reason for most of the things in our house, she comes and says, "Look, there's a lot of people out there that are doing this, that are really pouring their heart. They need to hear from you, right?" And so like 2 days before the election, I had an interview with a radio station, and they naturally asked me, and I said, "Look, I didn't plan on this. It wasn't in my bingo cards, but if I do get the honor of getting elected, I will accept the position. But I will do it without without getting paid for it, right? I didn't want to have any involvement and so forth." And so the election day comes, and to our surprise, thousands of people come out, write my name in, and I get granted the position that I worked for, the past 4 years, which was a congressional delegate over here. It was humbling. At the same, a lot of
So
mixed emotions going through it.
Well, and you said surprised. I personally know you and your wife, and I'm not surprised at all. You guys are some of the most amazing people we've ever met. And to bring up Beatrice, beautiful inside and out, I can only imagine what kind of weight that puts on you. You're a husband, you're a father, you're a politician, a scientist, author, so many things that you have going on in your life. And you're dealing with that, and you dealt with it so well. That, in my opinion, is extraordinary.
yeah, and I
Well,
would just add to the gravity of it is, several, led by, some of your famous Puerto Ricans like Ricky Martin, basically marched on San Juan. I've seen the
Yeah.
pictures of, people, saying very, very ugly things about you to, 18 months later, people rallying and honestly writing you in because they realized that they were wrong. And I want the world to know that, what an extraordinary experience, you went through, obviously unrightfully so. And I think, you are coming out of that, and just, what do you see, Ricky, for your future? You have this great knowledge of science. You have an unbelievable acumen in politics. You're a businessman. The world's your oyster. How are we going to celebrate this next chapter of being extraordinary?
Well, first of all, I'm looking forward to working with both of your insights. I mean, you're an extraordinary couple. Have great, diverse insights, and of course, I include Beatrice in that as well. So I think we have some things in the kitchen cooking, and
Oh,
that
something's cooking.
yes, that are really exciting, and I'll get to those. But to your point about having gone through these things, right? Aaron,
Well, and if I can interject, people put you on a pedestal in Puerto Rico. I've seen it firsthand. We showed up with Ricky at a conference, and it was like president showed up. It was like we waited for maybe 30 minutes
Well,
just
we
to have.
actually, in all honesty, we went and got a shot of tequila at the bar while you made only 200 yards.
And your security's like looking at us, and we're like, hey. But nonetheless, people put you on a pedestal, and that's how do you handle that?
Yeah, I'll. It's a great question, Christine, and one of the things that I saw, and one of the lessons I personally admit, you have to see where your flaws are. Have to see how you can mitigate them, or how you get good people around you to help you mitigate them, right? And one of the things that I was accused of was being somewhat robotic when I was in office, and it came because of that precise. Comment that you made. I really value and cherish uh, the office of the governor. I held it in high esteem, and I knew I was a temporary tenant, and I kind of had the weight of that always with me. So I really wanted to be, and similarly, some of the people that value what we did. I want them. It is an internal desire for me to make sure that their hopes and their trust that they've put in me gets validated. It doesn't get violated, right? So that's one of the lessons. But in all of this, I'm reminded of a story. It happened a couple of weeks ago. Because going through the whirlwind of not only being canceled but like globally being a villain is very rough, particularly when you were when you were kind of
Top dog.
yeah, you were doing very well, right? It just falls right after the event. I was struggling. I was angry. I had to, and I remember the day where I just immediately internalized, and I said, "Look, Ricky, you either stay angry for the rest of your life, or you forgive everybody. Don't forget, you forgive everybody and everything, and you just got to take this as a life lesson." And then I connect that to being in the airport in Santo Domingo the other days. And so a gentleman comes in. Some people are taking pictures and talking with me and so forth. And the gentleman comes and says, "I know you from somewhere." And I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever." And somebody comes in and tells him, "Oh, I know." He says, "You had something that I've never had." And I was like, "What?" He says, "You had a very trying moment that lets you see the internal raw nature of humanity and how you respond to it." And
Wow.
he came quite
Wow.
blankly.
That's beautiful.
Like
And
he
this is
said,
a
"I never had
stranger in the
that."
airport?
This was at the airport. Some guy.
We
He
gotta
just
find this guy. Where is he?
he dropped that Yoda type pearl of wisdom to me. He's like, "You have something that is very valuable," and he came to talk to me about how his grandparents had a challenge of moving from Cuba and so forth, but that he'd never had that, right? And I kind of like internalized that at that moment. It's, yes, these things, we're going to have these challenges, and I told them, you're at some point you're going to have your moment too, right? This is going to happen to all of us at different scales, right? It's not necessarily at that scale, but at different scale. And it is a challenge, but it is a gift if you're able to extract the value from it, learn from it, and get to develop from it, which is what my journey's taking me through now.
That's no, thanks for sharing that. I think gives people a contextual background of the roller coaster you've been on, and now as you look forward, to obviously I know right now we're in the current midst of Venezuela changing. You were kind of part of that conversation before. Could you share a little bit about your firsthand view of what's going on there with your firsthand relationship with President Trump, as well as potentially the new leadership of Venezuela? I'd love to get your perspective on that, because it's an extraordinary viewpoint that you have. So,
Absolutely. Look. When I was in office, 2018, I invited some of the opposition leaders from Venezuela that had ran elections. They were establishing that they had won the elections, but under Maduro's dictatorship, well, it wasn't to be. So we received them in the island. I learned a lot from them, and I decided at that point, which is something I think we could use now, to create an executive order and a joint agreement whereby Puerto Rico would serve as the natural transition point when Venezuela would move from dictatorship to an elected government, right? So that was 2018. 2019, early on, there were protests in Venezuela. People were tired of it. Medicine was not getting to the Venezuelan people. Forget about food. That was long before, but even medicine. And so, we look around and everybody in the international community is like protesting, saying, oh, this is so bad, this is so horrible, but nobody's doing anything about it. And so I remember having a meeting with Secretary of State Pompeo at that point and saying, look, we want to help Venezuela. We're mindful that we have to go through the Secretary of State because of our relationship with the United States. Can I do this? And without giving me an answer, he essentially said, kind of do what you must, and then you attend to your own circumstances. So what we did, we rallied to get people medicine, food, and so forth, send it to Venezuela so that they can have it.
And this is in 2019.
This is 2019, just a few months before I resigned office. And we get the boats over there, and people are waiting. They're clamoring and so forth. And Maduro's tanks and boats come outside, intercept the boat, don't allow it to come through. And from then on, Maduro and I had like a very strained relationship, to say the least. I
can imagine.
had one. But he was, to connect it to the other story, he was part of the financing effort that came after us in the protest of 2019, and you could see a little bit why, right? We sort of touched a chord there. So now, fast forward to the current predicament. I have two brief thoughts, and we can dive in however you want to. Number one, it was something that I'm glad was done, needed to be done. And was executed flawlessly. The first piece of it, right? I think the first piece of it, getting to Maduro, giving him a runway, trying to negotiate, even talking to President Maduro, that part was going over there, pretty stealth, pretty clean operation under the current circumstances, right? You get him, you set him to trial. The part where I'm worried, I wrote about 3 months ago a column in a Latin American newspaper where I said this is going to be Venezuela's defining hour, and that's true. But now I'm concerned about the next hour, and here's my positioning here. We've had a history, even in Venezuela, of removing totalitarian dictators, and what happens next tends to be more important than the removal itself. If another despot comes in, it'll probably be worse. If the transition is not managed effectively, it'll be worse. If something is implemented against the will of the people of Venezuela, it'll be worse, right? We've seen it in Afghanistan, we've seen it in Iraq, we've seen it everywhere. The advantage that we had at this point was that there was an election not too long ago where the United States recognized the rightfully elected leader, Inelmundo Gonzalez, and kind of the vice, but the real power behind it, Maria Cachel, which was what just won the Nobel Prize, right? What has happened in the past few days is that the U.S. has now agreed to leave the current vice president in that position, as opposed to facilitating this transition with the elected. I am very concerned about that. I am very concerned about it because the same structure that Maduro had. Maduro is just a guy. It's just one guy.
There's a system.
There's a system. That's right. That was there before Maduro with Chavez. There's key people in there, and they're still all there, right? And so,
is there an opportunity for Venezuela to maybe become a territory in the same way that Puerto Rico is? I mean, if we are already in control or running, is that an option?
I mean, I would say that it's up to the people of Venezuela to decide these things, right? The reason why there's all these talk, and I know I'm jumping from topic to topic, but there's all this talk about Greenland and the Gulf of America and all these, and Canada becoming a state and all
All the
these
weird
things.
things.
So some are half jokes, some are more serious than others. But the truth of the matter is that Puerto Rico, out of all of them, is the only one that has asked for it, that already has U.S. citizens asking for it, that's strategically positioned to benefit the United States. I mean, we just saw it right now with the operation in Venezuela. All of those planes and sort of the military effort was dictated from the island to move over there. So I think the will of the people should dictate, but for now, the people of Venezuela really deserve their elected government, and I would say that if I were advising the president,
Yeah.
I would try to make the transition as quickly as possible to the elected government, which is Edmundo Gonzalez, and then allow that to have a temporary time frame until a year and a half, where you can have free and fair elections again, for the people of Venezuela to decide. But the occupation side of things and leaving the current structure there, it leaves a bitter taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I think that leads to this maybe final topic that I really want to dig in with you, is really around perverse incentives. And as Christine mentioned, it's humans are very important, but systems are what fail us. So we can put people and with great intentions into roles and places, and they're not able to do the things that are needed to be done, or think they are doing the things that are needed to be done, not to understand that the system is working against them. You and I have a series of letters going back and forth that's writing a book around perverse incentives, where I want to, capture all that you learned while being governor of Puerto Rico and, shadow congressman, and, all the things that you've seen from your perspective around the system doesn't work. And obviously healthcare is something that is near and dear to you, and something that you're well versed in with your PhD in stem cells. What perverse incentives, maybe give our listeners a little bit understanding of what that means and why is so important, why you and I are going to spend so much time on that.
Oof, this is a great topic, a lot to dive in, but let me give you three things first. The moment where I saw this happening in real time in government, I saw great people, and stop me if you've heard this story, but I've seen great people, young, motivated, energetic people going into government, and I look at them 3 years after, and they've changed, right? So I always asked, what changed? What happened? So that's kind of the first piece, and the answer to that, which you and I are diving into, is that sometimes we have a motivation that is virtuous. We have this virtuous purpose, and then we say, well, to get to that virtuous purpose, we need to do A, B, C, and D. And the thing is, sometimes that A, B, C, and D stay fixed. And as time moves along, they get perverse. They even go against what your original objective is. To match it to your question about the medical system and so forth, you know, uh, the Western style of medicine, as we generally call it, is sick care, is not health care, right? And it stems from the idea that you go to a place, which were hospitals, and at the beginning they were there so that people would die, but they would die in a better fashion. Let's put it that way. And while that has progressed, it hasn't really changed. It's really targeted towards getting the illness, treating the illness, and treating it chronically, because there's other incentives, economics incentives, where now science lets us know that we can tackle all of that before it happens. We can be mindful of it, invest a fraction of what it would cost, and have better lives. The result, the proof is in the pudding. The good news is that in the past 50 years, our longevity, our average age span has increased by 19 years. The bad news is that 10 of those years we're dying. We are slowly, meticulously dying. And what healthcare should aspire is that, we all have an expiration date, but why suffer through it painfully? Why having to have, not lack of cognition, lack of mobility, and all of these things where we can tackle them up front. And in order to do that, the thing is there already. The science is there. There's a lot to be done. I think the next 10 years are going to be super exciting, but the flip is not as easy as you would think, right? If you were giving the two choices, you would obviously pick the preventative and
Right.
sort of wellness. But the flip is so hard because there's so many incentives, whether it's people stuck on their, on the traditional way of doing things, that they don't want to change that. People that are already the experts, the status quo, economic interest, and so forth. All of that is bundled up in a way that makes for this good thing to be limited in its progress. And that's just in healthcare. What Aaron and I are trying to explore is that this is happening everywhere, on every facet, whether it's systemically on the big scale or individually as an actor in all of this. You gave a recovering politician the microphone, so I've extended myself a little bit over here, but you have but my best perverse incentive that I can give as an example is sleeping. When I was in office, as I mentioned before, I worked hard, and I wanted to change the culture of this, this culture of government of not doing anything to like working. And I said, look, if I'm going to change it, I'm going to have to be the example of it. So I would work 20 hours a day. I was the first one up, first one out. In all San Juan, my office is like a little bit of a fishbowl where you could see the lights turn on. They would see it turn on at 3:30 in the morning, right? They know that I was there. And that was a virtuous idea, right? Let's change the culture to one where we're working. But at what cost? The cost was that I wasn't sleeping. The cost was that I said I wasn't sleeping, and I wore it as a badge of honor. And eventually that caught up to me. That hindered my judgment. That hindered my energy, temperament, and certain of these things. And had I known and identified, look, there's all these things happening, but really the root cause is that I'm sleeping 2 hours instead of 6 or 7 hours. Then I could do something meaningful. This is everywhere. Those perverse incentives are everywhere. They're in the DNA of what we do, and what you and I are trying to tackle a little bit as detectives is identify how we can go from the small from these small incentives, and then aggregate them and see them at the big scale, and hopefully that'll be a path for us to avoid some of these big problems that we have in government and in business and in society.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is, well explained on the perverse incentives, and really excited for our finish our book and talking about your foundation and some of your next chapters, and even us potentially creating a perverse incentive academy for young politicians to kind of root out these things. Where do you see the extraordinary future for you as you move forward in the next chapter?
Yeah, do tell.
Yeah. So, I'm still exploring that. I know that I'm going to be working closely with you guys on it. I know that my purpose is to visioneer beautiful futures, right? I think there's a moment, a space and time. You talked about, I feel blessed again. I've been at places in business, science, and government that few people have been, and I have the intersection of all three. And what I see coming in the future, Christine and Aaron, is that different from other moments in the past where you would have, the radio or the press or TV or the internet as this one unique technology that was
Mhm.
changing society. there's like 6 or 7 of them occurring right now that are going to change dramatically how we go. And to plug your book, it's an exponential theory moment, right, Aaron? I mean, you can explain this better than I can, but there are all these things stacking together, and the changes are going to be so massive and so rapid that I think as you know, we're tasked to have foresight on that and see how we can prepare as a society for those changes to tackle them more effectively. So I see myself at that intersection of science, whether it's, you know, biotechnology, longevity, energy, space, you know, space exploration, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. All of these things are happening now, right? And they're going to stack and benefit one from another, and they're going to be synergistic. And I see myself as you know, having this perspective, at least, obviously not an expert, but a perspective of how those things are merging, how they can flourish in the future, and you know, it's going to be up to us to figure out if we let those technologies and those opportunities help us lead us into beautiful futures or into the wrong path.
Well, as you know, I collect exponential thinkers, and as soon as we first met in Costa Rica and had dinner, and ended up into a 5-hour conversation that went to quantum physics, back to stem cells, to, you know, we explored our nerdhood.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Which we'll have to have you on another podcast to talk about the whole science side of this.
Oh
But
yeah, I'll be
we wanted to introduce everybody to you and your extraordinary nature. Probably have you on as a guest host here soon, because just excited to learn from your experience in all these areas. Christine, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, just thank you so much for being here. We know you're a busy man, so we just really appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Well, I from my end, thank you. You know, you've been both of you have been very influential in our lives. We can't be more happy to have extraordinary individuals such as yourselves, and you know, to the audience out there, you know, both Aaron and Christine have extraordinary stories. I'm sure they'll share along the way. So keep listening in, because every time I speak to them, I learn something super valuable.
Well,
Or at least fun.
yeah, we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna be curious, and we're gonna explore the future in a way to create, you know, what I'd say beautiful futures and beautiful exponential futures with extraordinary people. So we want to welcome you to the extraordinary community as you complete our podcast, and we see a future of surrounding ourselves with lots of extraordinary leaders like yourself. And we thank you. And that's it. I'm Aaron Bear.
I'm Christine Butler.
And we thank Governor Ricky Rosselló for joining us.
Don't forget to get your sleep tonight,
Yeah.
the doctor says.
I literally didn't get as much sleep as I needed last night. So,
Right.
anyways, we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.